Nathan Calvin, he is the general counsel of Encode, a small AI non-profit that has 3 full-time employees, so very small. So Nathan Calvin, one Tuesday night as my wife and I sat down to dinner, a sheriff's deputy knocked on the door to serve me a subpoena from OpenAI. I held back on talking about it because I didn't want to distract from SB 53. This is the law we need to talk about, but Newsom just signed the bill, so here's what happened. You might recall a story in the San Francisco Standard that talked about OpenAI retaliating against critics. Amongst other things, OpenAI asked for all of my private communication on SB 53, a bill that creates new transparency rules and whistleblower protection at large AI companies. The company he worked as general counsel for has criticized OpenAI's restructuring and worked on AI regulations, including SB 53. I believe OpenAI used the pretext of their lawsuit against Elon Musk to intimidate their critics and imply that Elon is behind all of them. So SB 53 is a piece of regulation that has now been pushed through in California, which requires the companies to be a lot more open and a lot more transparent about what they are doing. And it's been pushed forward in California. Most of the AI companies, including OpenAI, were extremely against it. And they wanted to change it so it didn't include companies that already had some kind of federal regulation. So basically, they wouldn't have to abide by the Californian rules because they had already agreed to some federal rules, which basically included all of the AI companies. So it would have allowed all the American AI companies to ignore SB 53. So OpenAI were actively campaigning against it. During their campaign against SB 53, it looks like they've been sending out subpoenas to people who were fighting for SB 53. Now, interestingly, Nathan Calvin has not come public about this, the guy who got subpoenaed, until after the political discussions, after the vote. So he has taken, I think, the correct position of, I don't want to interfere in the political proceedings, in the democratic decision of whether SB 53 goes forward. I don't want to kick up a fuss during this process because I believe in this happening. I believe in the process. Whereas OpenAI seem to have been sending out subpoenas during the discussions. So it looks like they were trying to influence the political proceedings, which is intimidation. And if this is true, if this is found to be the case, they're in a lot of trouble here. Pushes forward. There's a big problem with that idea. Elon isn't involved with Encode. Elon wasn't behind SB 53. He doesn't fund us, and we've never spoken to him. So Sam Altman, or OpenAI, or whoever authorized these subpoenas to be sent out, is saying that Elon Musk is behind companies like Encode and is like pulling the strings in the background and using it to attack OpenAI via these other bodies like Encode. So the subpoena was sent out to basically requisition records, including private communications, in order to find out whether this was the case and whether Elon Musk was fiddling around in the background. So OpenAI went beyond just subpoenaing Encode about Elon. OpenAI could and did send a subpoena to Encode's corporate address asking about our funders or communication with Elon. If OpenAI had stopped there, maybe you could argue it was in good faith, but they didn't stop there. They also sent a sheriff's deputy to my home and asked me to turn over private texts and emails with Californian legislators, college students, and former OpenAI employees. This is not normal. OpenAI used an unrelated lawsuit to intimidate advocates of a bill trying to regulate them, while the bill was still being debated. OpenAI had no legal right to ask for this information, so we submitted an objection explaining why we would not be providing our private communication. They never replied. A magistrate judge even chastised OpenAI more broadly for their behavior in the discovery process in their case against Musk. This isn't the only way that OpenAI behaved poorly before it was signed. They also sent Governor Newsom a letter trying to gut the bill by waiving all the requirements for any company that does any evaluation work with the federal government. Yeah, basically saying if we are under federal rules, then the California rules don't apply, etc. So this is problematic. It turns out there were a few subpoenas sent during this time. Very interestingly, Joshua Ashim, I'm not sure how to say your name, sorry Joshua, has tweeted, "At what is possibly a risk to my whole career, I will say this doesn't seem great." Now, Joshua is the head of mission alignment at OpenAI. So he's inside of OpenAI and he works on the alignment, how we can make sure these models are beneficial for the good of humanity. Lately, I've been describing my role as something like a public advocate, so I'd be remiss if I didn't share some thoughts for the public on this. And then he goes on to discuss it. All views here are my own. My opinions about SB 53 are entirely orthogonal to this thread, so at a right angle. I haven't said much about them so far, and I also believe this is not the time, but what I've said is that I think whistleblower protections are important. In that spirit, I commend Nathan for speaking up, the guy who got subpoenaed. I think OpenAI has a rational interest and technical expertise to be an involved, engaged organizational questions like AI regulation. We can and should work on safety bills like SB 53. We can't be doing things that make us into a frightening power instead of a virtuous one. We have a duty to and a mission for all of humanity. The bar to pursue that duty is remarkably high. The dangerously incorrect use of power is the result of many small choices that are all borderline but get no pushback. Without someone speaking up, once in a while it can get worse, so this is my pushback. Yes, I do wonder if Joshua is going to be keeping his job this week. He won't be fired this week because that's going to look bad. The optics are terrible on that, but I would not be surprised if Joshua has just lost his job just slightly further down the line when it's less embarrassing for OpenAI. So this whole thing is a mess. It's extremely unpleasant, and it's all wrapped up in how much power OpenAI has over the market as a whole, because it is connected to practically everybody now. So we're getting into the phase where OpenAI is potentially too big to fail. And then what role should AI companies have in the regulation of artificial intelligence? Because obviously they are not impartial parties when it comes to these discussions. So SB 53 did pass anyway. It passed in September, a couple of weeks ago. And it requires all AI developers to submit risk assessments and transparency reports to California, which is a big push. But OpenAI were actively trying to shut this down. And it seems like they were squeezing small groups. They were squeezing individuals by serving up scary subpoenas, which is a big problem. And when you are sending subpoenas or you're threatening to wrap up in legal proceedings a 3-person policy non-profit like ENCODE, when you are a $500 billion titan, it's not a good look. It is an extremely problematic look, and they're going to be unraveling this for the next few weeks.